If you set out to test a hypothesis and it didn't 100% come back in your favor, say so. Be the explorer, creating for the human and not for the beast or the machine, I think is a big shift for a lot of people. To be bold, you have to be zany or wacky, or you have to talk like you're, some unhinged young millennial. Like, you don't.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Radical Content. And boy, do we have a treat for you today. When we call this show Radical Content, it's about helping people, helping brands create content that breaks through, that connects, that builds emotional connections. I don't know if there's someone that's talked about content more than Erin Balsa. Erin Balsa is a writer, a content marketer, a marketing consultant, and the founder and CEO of House of Bold as an entrepreneur. How's that for an intro, Erin? Are we excited for today?
So excited. Thanks for having me, Eric.
So you have 42,697 followers on LinkedIn. You talk about content all the time. And so I felt a little pressure preparing for the show today, if I'm honest. So maybe we should do a live review afterwards. Like, how was the show? How are the questions? How do you think it flowed?
Absolutely. I'd love that.
I know you've done some roast my photo chat GPT on LinkedIn. Maybe we'll do a roast my episode at some point with you. But
oh man, as long as the listeners don't, give me a hard time about my accent, because I'm 45 years old and this thing is never going away.
Oh, you sound great. And I'll be 47 in August. And we're still in social, we're still in content, we're still helping brands tell stories. And so that's really, really good. I kind of wanted to start bigger, kind of broader for you a little bit. We talk a lot on here about social, long form, short form. You talk a lot about B2B, a lot about the importance of research and in marketing and also in content. Why do you feel like content and content strategies are so important to brands and businesses? I know that sounds very broad and maybe a hard place to land, but I think someone that talks about this so much and knows the world of where we are today with brand and business and content, how important do you think it still is today in 2026?
It's everything. I think in 2026, especially in the AI era, where we're all inundated with AI slop, as they're calling it, I think that as a brand, if you're not insanely focused on building trust with your audience, as a friend of mine said the other day, if you're not maniacally focused on building trust, you're getting left in the dust, right? We can look at brands like Anthropic. They have a whole website where they are dedicated to transparency, like radical transparency about their product. And they're telling you all the potential negative implications that the product they sell could bring to society. That is the perfect example of radical transparency and why a lot of people trust them as a brand right now, as opposed to some of their competitors. When you come down a few levels to the kind of companies I work with, which are B2B startups and companies that are approaching the 50 million ARR mark, I think it's really, really important to be radically transparent throughout all your content, to have a consistent, differentiated point of view throughout all your content, because that's the best way today to get known for the things you most want to be known for while also building trust.
Why do you think brands are struggling with that? Because as you say it, and as I believe it, I'm like, well, sure, this seems very normal, but yet this isn't the case for everyone. What are some of the reasons why you think, whether B2B or consumer facing, are still struggling to understand not just the value, but the true brand importance of content?
Because it's still kind of a new concept, and a lot of people that are launching a company, they might not have a background in brand or marketing. So they might have a background as a subject matter expert. They might just be a young entrepreneur. They just really don't learn this kind of stuff necessarily in business school. So I think that's one aspect. And I also think budget comes into play. A lot of times when you're starting a company, you might not have the budget yet to hire someone who's been around the block, who really gets the larger strategic picture, and you might just start winging it. I know I saw this just the other day. Someone I know is trying to launch an app. She's brilliant. She's had a very successful career, but she has not been in tech and she has not done marketing. And I saw her make these mistakes that I would consider really beginner sloppy mistakes. And I had to be like, hey, do you realize that you're completely breaking any iota of trust that you could be building with your audience right now? Stop doing that immediately. And they just don't know. Really smart, brilliant people who are really driven don't get marketing until they are shown the way. And I think that is why we see so much bad behavior on such a widespread level. And people are adopting AI and they're like, okay, cool, I can pump out all this content and it's pretty good. And actually, if I'm not a writer, it's going to be a lot better than I could do without it. So
Right.
they think it's good enough, and it's just not, because if everyone else could put out the exact same message that you're putting out, it's just not good enough.
You mentioned something early in that statement where you talked about people understanding brand. And while there is tons of research and data about the importance of content to performance, content to transaction, there is a mindset about people that really understand the importance of building brand. And so one of the other things you talked about when you started was building trust. I foundationally believe that one of the biggest challenges in businesses today is they don't prioritize brand and trust building. It doesn't mean they don't say it out of their mouth. They say it. It's in all the decks. It's in our brand. But when it comes into where are we investing, what are the resources going towards, what is our energy activating on, it's almost like that goes to the side. And it's like, well, what do you mean? We got a great logo. We built our website. Our brand is beautiful. And it's like, oh, you don't get it. You don't get what it really means to work hard to build deep emotional connections with your customers. And I just think that there's like a evolution of leadership that's happening right now that are handing the baton to kind of newer thinkers that think about content, think about brand, even think about social, probably more kind of top of mind than they do maybe the way things used to be done back in the day. So I do think while some of us live in a state where it's like, oh, traditional is gone and new media is the game, it's really not yet. We are still very much in a long handoff, in my perspective.
Yes, and of course, it depends who you're selling to. What are you selling? Sure. You know, how long is the sales cycle? How many people have to get bought in? Not only that, how, widespread is this tool going to be across the enterprise? If you're selling something to an end user, there's very little trust that you need to establish, because you're not putting your reputation on the line. If you're selling something that's going to be used by an entire team or an entire org, you need a metric ton of trust. And I don't think that everyone really realizes that.
I love the example of Anthropic. I think back to an example from a few years ago. It was more of a communications example, but Walmart was getting beat up before their rebrand around some of the impacts they were having to smaller communities, some of the impacts they were having to smaller businesses. And they had to go on a rebuilding of trust exercise from a content standpoint. And they did original YouTube series where they were talking about how much small businesses are actually in Walmart you just don't know about. But that was them kind of doing the research, understanding what people say. By the way, I'm not here to say that Walmart is the best supporter of small business, but I understand the strategy that they were trying to pull on. So speaking of content strategies a little bit, we've been doing this for a minute. Thoughts on how content strategies at the brand level have evolved? Are they a dated exercise, or are they still paramount to the overall business?
Well, I've been in content for about 15 years. I started off in editorial, then I went to a content marketing agency, which back then was very focused on SEO and ranking for certain search terms and getting people to your website, which is where they primarily consumed your content. So there's been a huge shift over the last few years. SEO is still important, but the big shift is that a lot of people are reading your content of your website. So you need to be creating content for the different channels where you're engaging with your audience. So I'd say that has been a big shift, and the shift away from optimizing the article for the search engines and really kind of retraining our brains to really just communicate with the human who's consuming the article and creating for the human and not for the beast or the machine, I think is a big shift for a lot of people who have been doing this more than just a few years.
You talk a lot about LinkedIn and other places in interviews. We're going to break open kind of your what you call the framework for bold content. There's a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about. As we kind of set that up, is why is maybe content not as great? Why is it not as bold and interesting with the struggles? When you look across all the discussions you're having, the people that you're helping, do you see it more frequently as a courage issue, as a creativity issue, or something else you talk about a lot that might be a little different than those two, which is knowing themselves? Because it's hard to talk about who you are and what you stand for when you don't fully know yourself.
So from all the conversations I've had with so many marketing leaders, It's a couple different things. The toughest nut to crack, in my opinion, is when you have really super smart internal subject matter experts and executives who can't have, as my CMO friend put it, they can't have a leading thought. I cannot pull these leading thoughts out of their heads. They just don't have them. They're genius, they're brilliant, they know their discipline, they have their PhDs, but they cannot communicate their leading thoughts. That for me is the hardest nut to crack.
What are you describing when you say leading thought?
So I'm talking about true thought leadership. And if anyone's interested, I had a podcast for a while called The Notorious Thought Leader, where we really dug down into the word, the terminology, like what the f- is thought leadership? Because nobody understands it.
We got an F-bomb out of her, Dana. I knew it was going to happen.
Sorry. Feel free to censor me. Please censor me.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
For me personally, when I say a thought leadership, I really just mean you're adding something new and original to the conversation. You're putting, you're pressing a familiar problem through a new lens. You're showing people a problem they didn't realize existed, a new way to think about their work, a new way to work. So it's all about that originality and that fresh perspective and fresh point of view. So a lot of these, leaders, let's say that you are a software engineer and you're super brilliant, but you're just not able to communicate or to codify your knowledge into some sort of perspective, framework, mental model that helps others understand it in a new way and helps others work better and apply it in their own day-to-day life. So that's really what I mean. And I think that's the toughest nut to crack.
It's why people like you are around, right? Like it's like a communication ninja. I think about this a lot. And when we close this episode, I want to talk to you a little about kind of entrepreneurship content.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what makes bold content. I know you've been pretty outspoken about kind of a framework. Do you want to kind of let us know what that framework is?
Yeah, I think there was a word you tossed out there not long ago, and it was courage. And I think that's really at the root of what it means to be bold. Some people, I think, also misunderstand what it means to be bold. And they might think to be bold, you have to be zany or wacky, or you have to talk like you're, some unhinged, like young millennial. Like you don't. I think some people also think that bold means being a total a-hole and just being a real provocative jerk. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Yeah, I used to think that people in social would say, well, we're not going to be Wendy's. And I was like, we're not going to troll people on Twitter. I was like, that's not the only pathway.
That's not the only pathway. I think the way that you're bold needs to kind of be in line with your brand archetype and who you really are as a brand and your brand values. And there's all different ways to be bold. The most important thing I think that is at the root of it all is the courage, which is having the courage to go against the grain, to be different, having the courage to say what everyone else is maybe thinking and not saying. What I really help my clients do is to be radically transparent. And it doesn't mean you're going to tell them, I had a stomach ache last night. I'm going to let you know everything about me personally. I don't mean that, not that kind of transparency. I mean specific to content creation, specific to original research, which is what my focus is in my business these days. I help brands come out and, survey their audience, survey a couple different audiences to surface misalignment, and then actually show what they found instead of only showing the findings that came back in their favor and pretending that all the rest didn't exist.
Yeah, I love that. I know you've mentioned kind of, you're talking about one specific one here, but you've mentioned originality, novelty, proof, and depth as kind of your 4 elements for bold content. And we're talking about courageousness, which probably sits a little bit in a few of these, but definitely the originality side, right? The thing that drives me bonkers, I say this to people all the time, is as a content professional, former radio guy turned marketer, now entrepreneur who also creates a lot of content for myself and for clients, I find it so difficult to know how much garbage content is being created and published, ideated, approved, feedback's being given that gets sent out to people that no one ever sees. It goes into why can't I think of it? Where do people die? We put them in the ground. It's called a
grave?
A graveyard, a grave site. Yeah, it goes into like the content graveyard, and it's so disappointing. Again, like I said it when I started this podcast, like I have some nervousness about this because I care about what we're creating, and I hope it actually is providing value both to you and to the listener. And when you get into this idea of originality, I think where people struggle is, I used to hear this at one of the big Fortune 500 companies that I dealt with. I was like, man, we could take down number one if we operated a bit more like a challenger. But the business was so good, there was no appetite for that jump and that leapfrog. I'm naturally, I called my company Maverick. So I'm naturally one that tends to want to move in that direction, disrupt, break through, try to find things that are different. But there's so many people that stay in this land of sea of sameness. What do you think drives them to hang out there?
Because it takes a long time to develop an original point of view. It takes courage to communicate it. And they might not have the framework through which to know how to make a change. So the framework that you mentioned a minute ago was something I came up with several years back. And it's the originality, the proof, the novelty, and the depth. Those are, I think, the four kind of critical elements in any content strategy when you're selling a B2B product, particularly if it's one that is at all complex, requires some sort of buy-in. And so what I started doing was I came up with an assessment. So I would take my clients through it, and I would help them really take a look at their content library, all the content they had published to date, and go through this assessment to try to understand how they were stacking up across these four pillars. What's your originality score? What's your novelty score? What's your proof score? What's your depth score?
What was normally the lowest?
So proof was typically good because a lot of people have an easy time putting out some case studies.
Right.
I would say like novelty was typically the lowest. That's okay. Not every B2B brand has to be really novel. Again, you have this recipe that you need to tweak. It's kind of like a radio stereo dial. You turn the volume up or down, and it's like that for all four of these pillars. So depending on who you sell to, your depth might need to be cranked up to the highest volume, because if they don't think you truly are like an authority on this space, they're not going to buy from you. So I would really help them understand, based on their ICP, their ACV, what is the right kind of ratio of these four elements? Let's see where you are today, and let's find out, the low-hanging fruit that's easy for us to do, and then some longer-term build-outs, and then we'll get you to where you need to be. And that was actually really interesting to see people light up. Not so much the marketing leaders, like they were like, oh, wow, like what an interesting way. I never thought about it this way. But when I would work with more of like a CEO or a founder, they were like, holy crap.
One thing I've noticed in marketing, whether it be for brands, whether it be for B2B, consumer facing brands, B2B, or even, an entrepreneur that maybe is, out there doing executive leader, founder kind of stuff, is this permission to be human. I don't know why it's so hard, but I don't know if it's just the way we've trained businesses, brands, and people to communicate, broadly, but these channels have, in these devices, have given us such an ability to communicate at scale. You mentioned authenticity earlier. Like authenticity is seen and read and felt. And I feel like that marketers today are starting to get this feeling like they have this permission to be human. And I feel like it's like a light bulb that goes off. Have you seen that in some of the work that you've been doing?
Yes. I'm just going to say yes. So yes, more so with the individual people who are publishing content on behalf of their brand or the brand they work for. A little bit less so in terms of the brands themselves, particularly the brands that are serious or that are selling to a highly educated audience. I mean, I can point out one of my clients who's a great example of this. So they are a legal client engagement platform. They sell to practicing attorneys, law firm partners. It's a pretty serious space.
People that are known to be lots of fun.
Pretty serious space. And they do put out really meaty, serious, thoughtful content. But the other day, I opened up my email and I got I'm on their email list, of course, and I got an email and it was so fun. And it was changing the song lyrics to the song It's Tricky by Run DMC. And I replied right away to the CMO. I'm like, Paul, was this your handiwork? And he's like, yeah, but I asked Kylie if it was okay. I'm like, that's freaking awesome.
Love that.
Lawyers are humans too. And if they're around our age, they freaking know Run DMC. They're going to recognize those lyrics
100.
immediately. That's fun.
Yeah.
Test those things. If it flops and you get not one single person replying to your email, like, maybe it's not resonating with them. But if you get a few replies, you're tipping your toes in the right direction. You can have a little more fun and be a little more authentic and human.
I love that. I've said this on the show before, but I interviewed Tim Clark, who's the head of digital for NASCAR. And he told me one time when they were first trying to get into TikTok, he said, TikTok made us understand how we should have always been on social. Like he was like, TikTok let us let our hair down, be a little ridiculous, be a little fun, show a side of NASCAR we would never show because we're serious race car people. And then he was like, oh my God, we should be like this everywhere. And social media professionals like me are like, yeah, no duh. I'm glad you finally captured it because of a silly, fun, musical application that helped you kind of understand it. But I always loved that epiphany because I think we all, many marketers kind of go through that when content people, I think, naturally kind of live there. Another angle on that is, I think you've done this. How have you found a way to try to bring, we're talking a little bit of kind of an overall brand, overall content strategies, but let's talk about personality and tone, because it really matters when you have a personality and a tone that is attractive and draws people in. Have you found other ways that you've been able to help some of your clients or other people evolve their personality to be a bit more, authentic or approachable?
Yes, but it's challenging, as any marketer knows, because there's always going to be somebody high up in the company who's going to be too scared or not have the courage to evolve the brand voice. I see this and have seen this over the years many times. You have your marketers who are like, yes, let's put out this voicey email. Let's do this on social. Let's put out this video where we're going to do this kind of wild thing. And then you edit it down with one stakeholder review round. Then the other one says, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't say this, or, oh, maybe we should pass this through legal just to take a look at it. And what happens is you end up publishing with something much more bland than what was originally intended, or worse, not publishing it at all. So one of the solutions for that is, again, to have some sort of definition conversation about what does bold look like for us? What are our guardrails? So that way, marketing's not spending all this time and energy and getting all pumped up about this awesome video they're going to produce, and they write the script and they get all the parts, and then they're told, no, you can't do this. That's such a waste of resource, and it's such a freaking Debbie Downer. Nobody wants that. So I always encourage sit down, get your CEO in the room. If you have a real involved legal department, get them in the conversation too, and scope out the guardrails. How much can we be bold and what does that look like? And that can save a lot of heartbreak and lost time on the back end.
So let me ask you this. What is exciting you about the future of content today? Things that are coming from the outside world, whether it be AI or, pushing more performance marketing. What is getting you excited about the world of content today?
I am so excited about the onslaught of AI slop and lookalike generic content, because it gives brands a freaking huge opportunity to stand out by going in the opposite direction, by publishing original, authentic, research, data-driven content that's differentiated. So I would encourage you to go a bit deeper. If somebody could use AI to create this exact report in less than a day, that's not the kind of content you want to be putting out today.
Yeah, my fear of the AI is, it's just, first off, I am playing around with AI in so many fun ways. I think it's a very, very fun and interesting tool, but I think it can make people lazy. And I think I heard someone say one time, the best creators are the best thinkers. And so when you start to outsource your thinking, your ideation, you lose your originality. You 100%. Lose your ability to be novel. You lose your ability to have a point of view that is distinct and original. And so I agree. I think that is the bright side of this, is there's going to be a lot of garbage that's out there. And I talk a lot to travel and hospitality brands, and that's where we spend a lot of time. And I'm like, man, you still have to put a camera on somebody in your resort having the best time ever. So let's make sure those feel fully human, make sure those feel fully authentic. I think that's really fun. So you talk a lot about reporting being a hogwash, and a lot of what you're doing right now is helping people understand, where did that come from, and why is that such a a big part of what you guys do at House of Bold?
I've been doing research reports for close to a decade now. What I've noticed a lot of the time with B2B research is two problems. Number one, if they go it alone and they're not leaning on an external market research partner or an internal PhD data scientist, someone who's really qualified, you wind up with sloppy data. The other one is something that a lot of marketers don't even realize they're doing. And I was guilty of this too when I first started. And it's because as a marketer, you're really trained to position your brand in the best light. And you're really kind of at odds with what research really is all about, which is surfacing the truth. So what happens is you run the survey and you get your responses back and you're like, cool, 10 of these make us look good. And 10 of these don't really help our positioning. So let's just throw these 10 out.
Yeah, 100%.
We'll make it look like we asked only 10 questions, and look, it makes us look perfect. People are getting more skeptical. You don't have that same baseline level of trust that is extended to you like you once did. And when the market changes and when people are getting more inundated with AI slop and deceptive marketing tactics over time, they're getting more skeptical. Guess what? Your marketing tactics and philosophy has to change. And that's why I'm really an advocate against selective reporting. You can't just select what you want to tell people when you do research. You need to be more transparent. If you set out to test a hypothesis and it didn't 100% come back in your favor, say so. Be the explorer. Take people along on that journey. That's much more endearing than always being the expert, even if it means you have to lie to convince people that you're right.
Dude, that's real good. There's a lot of people in this watching this at some point that are gonna be like, I really agreed with her until the last few minutes, and then she really started coming after me. I think you're right. I think that's a good take. All right, I'm gonna read something to you that I think is a bit. It's been a bit, but I thought it was interesting as I was kind of going through your LinkedIn. See if you remember this. My content philosophy. I believe that your content should reflect the same you that your happiest customers, partners, employees see. Every brand has a unique essence and authentic, fundamental self. But that essence rarely comes across in marketing content. In the era of digital noise, where everyone is drowning in soulless content, I love the writing. It's such a writer, by the way. You can stand out and win mind share by being unapologetically yourself. It's not about being loud or provocative. It's about being real. Here's where I wanted to go with this. First off, love it. I love that. This is my question here. How have you been able to show up as you in your LinkedIn? What advice would you give someone that is kind of in that stage? Really, me.
I'm going to answer this question in two parts, if that's okay.
Great, go for it. I feel like I'm on a client consulting call now.
The original intent behind the post was really speaking to the brand and the people that are creating content on behalf of a brand. So when I say your brand doesn't always show up online like the people who actually know you best at work. An example of how to get this right, there's a company called User Evidence. It's a B2B tech company, and they are from this mountain town in Utah. And they decided to start having an annual conference there. And they have people riding on horseback with the mountains in the background. On their website, they have Nevadic to do their interactive demos. And they built a demo center and they called it the Demo Ranch. So they're really baking in their brand essence as this brand in the mountains so that everywhere they show up at their events, on their website, in their demo center, you get that brand essence and it's really authentic. So that is really what I mean applicably to like the brand itself. In terms of you and I, so, we're the face of our brands. And, the brand really is an extension of ourselves in a lot of ways when you start off and you're a small business owner. That's why, my brand right now is called House of Bold, and that brand name might evolve as my offer has evolved over the years. I mean, I think that I'm a Capricorn, so I'm not the life of the party. I'm not bold in that way. I'm not the one dancing on the table with my shirt off. Nobody wants to see that. I've had 3 kids. But I'm bold in the sense that I've always marched to the beat of my own drum.
Same, yeah.
A lot of times my friends went down a very conventional path. They graduated from college. They've been in the same field for 25 years. I didn't do that. I just sold everything I owned and I packed up my little Honda Civic and I moved away and I moved to 2 different countries and I just kind of let the wind take me. I'm covered in tattoos. I have really alternative interests. I have weird art in my house.
I saw that. I was like, whose head is freaking sitting over your shoulder?
I just try to, let my freak flag fly in that way. I'm not a LinkedIn ghostwriter. I'm not a social media person. I create thought leadership and research-driven content for B2B brands that sell complex technology to enterprise companies. So it's really kind of like oh my God, this is a pattern interruption. This is not what I'm used to seeing. And you either love it or you hate it. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people not liking me. I'm okay with not being everyone's cup of tea. And I think the more that you can get comfortable with yourself in that way, the more authentic you'll allow yourself to be.
Yeah, I think this is just a topic for therapy at this point, Erin.
There you go.
All right, we're going to end this with a little fun game. So we're going to take this from a perspective of B2B marketers, all right? We're going to play a game called Cut or Invest.
Okay.
So you're just going to make a broad, sweeping, quick decision on each individual topic, and you're going to say cut and invest. All right, here we go. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
For B2B marketers, cut or invest. Paid social.
Invest.
Organic social.
Invest.
White papers.
Cut.
Events and experiences.
Invest.
Testimonials.
I don't think you need to invest. It's free. Just ask your happy customers and do it for free and get them up there.
Event sponsorships.
Oh, it really depends. I would say try to be an event speaker instead.
Blogs, blogs.
It doesn't cost much. Keep it.
YouTube.
Depends, but I'd say invest. You can always repurpose the content.
Brand building. I get that's general, but investing in brand.
Invest.
Yeah. Founder, executive level content.
Invest as long as you're not going to outsource it to some 22-year-old who's never actually worked in a business and knows nothing about it.
LinkedIn.
Invest, definitely. Even though it drives me up a damn wall.
Same.
Gotta invest. Gotta be there.
I agree. So much free attention, but it takes time to be great, and you're doing it great. Hey, Erin, so much fun. Thank you for the time. Congratulations on everything that you've built, both personally and in your business and professionally. I hope you had an awesome time on Radical Content, but we really enjoyed it today.
I did, and I hope you had a fun time, and I hope your audience likes this. And let's chat again. This has been fun.
That's it, everybody. Another episode of Radical Content. Follow Erin Balsa, like salsa but not salsa. Follow her on LinkedIn. She's a good follow. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.